Welcome to Cuppa with a doula. I'm your host, Alicia. I'm an exercise physiologist by trade. I'm also a doula and I'm a mum to two. I created this podcast over a year ago now to allow mums to have a platform to safely share their birth and parenting journey, regardless of where they birth, whether it's a hospital birth, it's a planned C-section, whether they birthed at home, and whether they had a midwife present or not. It's all on Cuppa with a doula. And every month, I also chat with an expert in the field of pregnancy, birth, and parenting in the aim to be able to share expert knowledge and raise awareness about important topics. So if you've been enjoying the podcast, please consider subscribing either on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast from. I'm also on YouTube as well, so you can watch the interviews if you'd like. And if you wouldn't mind, please leave a review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. It really helps the algorithm to find me, to then share what I do so that more mums, more parents to be can find me. So with this in mind, I'll leave you with the episode now. If you want to share your story, head over to the show notes. There's a link there and you can fill out the form and I'll get in touch with you to record your incredible birth and parenting journey. In today's episode, I am chatting with the incredible Shantelle. Shantelle is coming back on the podcast today. She has already shared her pregnancy and the birth of her baby boy Bowie, who was born at 24 weeks of gestation and spent 8 months in the NICU. This is an incredible story. If you want to listen to it, it's episode 5, so go have a look at it on the podcast platform you're listening this on. It is incredible. But today, Shantelle is back to share with us an insight into her own experience of the NICU. So this is all personal, but in today's episode, Shantelle sets a scene of what the NICU might look like, how it is organized, the different machines that baby might be put on. She talks about how to look after your mental health, what it might be like to spend a day or weeks or even months in the NICU, and also resources that are available to parents who are going through this tough journey. And I think this episode is really amazing if your baby might be facing prematurity and might be facing a NICU stay, to really help you to prepare for this, or if you unexpectedly find yourself navigating this really tough journey. I think this is a great episode and I really hope that it helps you in this journey. So without further ado, I'll leave you to listen to Chantelle's incredible insight into the NICU. Hi Shantelle, thank you so much for coming back on the podcast.
Hi Alicia, thank you so much for having me.
Not a problem. So Shantelle, as I just said, you are back on the podcast to tell us all about NICU today. That's what we're going to be talking about, because you and obviously your son Bowie have an incredible story to talk about and you have so much knowledge around the NICU. So do you want to introduce, your story and obviously Bowie's story again? Obviously your episode is up there. I believe it's episode number 3. Yeah. And I feel like I could have looked that up before. But your story is up there and I will put your story link back in the show notes for everyone to listen to the full birth story and journey of Bowie. But do you want to give us a little bit of a summary of what happened and how it all unfolded?
Okay, great. Sounds good. So I'm Shantelle. I'm 33. I live in WA with my husband. Bowie is our only child, our first boy, and he was born prematurely at 24 weeks on the dot. He weighed 623 grams at birth. He was only 28 centimeters long and his head circumference was 21 centimeters. We don't know why I gave birth so early. My waters broke at 23 and 5. It was just preterm premature rupture of the membrane. So PPROM, they did the tests, they couldn't find anything. So we don't really know what exactly happened. Bowie spent 5 months at King Edward Memorial Hospital in Subiaco, WA, and then he got transferred when he aged out and went to Perth Children's Hospital for 3 months. So, all in all, he spent 8 months in hospital and was under the respiratory ward for the 3 months in the Children's Hospital. So, his main issues were his breathing. At the end, it became a big balance of breathing versus weight gain versus eating. So, to eat, it takes a lot of energy, which then makes it hard to breathe. But then you need to be bigger to get stronger to be able to breathe. And then it's a vicious cycle. So that's why it really took as long as it did. So, yeah, today Bowie is 18 months actual. So, actual meaning by his birth date. And he just turned 14 months corrected by his due date last week.
Oh, and it's amazing. Your story and Bowie's story is amazing because obviously he was born so prematurely, and he spent 8 months in hospital, which is a significant amount of time. But now he's totally fine, and he's he's like any little boys really. I think we briefly talked about it in your episode, but I don't think he has any major. I don't like to say deficits, but major. What's the correct term there? I've lost my wording.
So Bowie had no repercussions, no issues, essentially from the prematurity in terms of things that will require surgery or medication or lifelong issues in that way. So we are lucky. He does have a delay. He has a speech delay. He was hard of hearing for about 6-7 months. So that has significantly delayed his communication. And when we went to the review on Friday, we did a few tests for him, and he passed his gross motor, and his social skills were, that of a child his age, his peers, without any issues. And then his speech was obviously in the lower percentile. So overall, the doctor said he's got the development level of a 10-month-old. And obviously there are some strengths, he's got really strong upper body. He can push chairs around. He's a strong little guy. He knows how to problem solve and turn his little walker around, but he doesn't yet understand object permanence. So you can hide something under a cloth and to him it's just gone. So it's interesting to see those different strengths and, quote unquote weaknesses when they're that age. And even in our other premi friends, they've all got different strengths. So it's very encouraging to see that. And we were really happy with the outcome of the test because we work really hard with our early intervention team at PCH, and we're constantly working on those things. So he's come very far.
Yeah, that's incredible. And that's something we're going to talk about, things that I didn't think about or I didn't consider when you have when you have a full-term baby, milestones that we take for granted, and that people like you who have preterm babies have to are faced with and have to consider things that are not granted, for you. And that's really, and that's what we're doing this podcast because, I think it's going to help a lot of other parents who may be faced with a stay in the NICU, whether that's a short one or it's a longer one, just to kind of know what is it like to have a child in the NICU? What can you expect? What, the language in there is obviously different because there is a lot more medical terms thrown at you. There is a lot more, again, milestones that I couldn't even imagine, and I still probably can't even imagine the half of it. There's a lot of things that, you don't really know about unless you've been exposed to it like you have, or unless you research it. And even then it can be a bit difficult to find all the info. So hopefully this episode gathers everything and can kind of set a scene and help prepare future parents who may be faced with NICU, or whether
I hope so.
Or whether the child has to be sent to NICU post birth, or is sent after days or weeks after being born or something. Yeah, just setting the scene and giving the keys to better prepare yourself for what could be coming or for what is happening?
Well, I think it's important to say up front, no matter the length of the stay, it's always scary because when it happens as the parent, you don't know how long it's going to be. The only milestone they can really give you, generally speaking, across the board, is their due date. So every
Yeah.
parent is going to say, is going to hear from the doctors, we'll try for the due date. That's what we use as our main date in our mind, and then from there we'll be able to gauge based on their breathing and eating and everything else that they need,
Yeah.
whether or not it'll be sooner or later. But basically, when you are a patient in the NICU, you'll get visited by a social worker, and they will give you some goodie bags from different charities as well as the hospital. There's usually at least one or two of those books that will have a lot of the terms. So even though it's a lot of information to take in, it is there when you're ready. So when you go in and when the nurses feel that you're ready to engage, they will explain all of the machines. They'll explain the different jargon that they use. And then in the books, you can sort of go look it up and remind yourself of the meanings, and then remind yourself so you can then pass it on to family members who aren't allowed in the NICU. So those charities are really good for that. So you have the resources, and then at a bedside level, the nurses are amazing at reminding you, showing you, explaining all of the different machines. So when we first rolled in, I've just got a photo here. So that was our son's spot in the pod. So we call them pods.
Yep.
So we've got his bed here. It's covered with a blanket just to keep all the light out because they are very sensitive to the light. So nice and dark for him. We've got his jet ventilator, which is set up just here. And then we've got the oxygen saturation, different monitors. This one is linked to his bed as well. So that will give you the temperature, which in the beginning, especially if they are what we call microprems, they can't regulate heat. So they need to be in a very warm, humid environment. And another thing people might not realize is the NICU itself is very humid. It's very hot in there. So when you've just given birth and it's summer and you have to go in from the car every day, it is hot. It is very, very hot. And that's one thing I definitely struggled with, because I found that for a year after I had my son, I didn't stop sweating. Even in winter, I think I had to put on a jumper twice last year. So that was a big thing. Very, very hot and humid in there. Very uncomfortable. And then when you have them on your body for cuddles, you still need to put a blanket on them because they're not regulating their temperature. So yeah, if you run hot, I'm sorry. That's something that just happens in there.
That's good to know, actually.
In his pod.
I couldn't imagine that.
Yeah. Oh, and in winter, it's hard as well because you rug up to be outside, but as soon as you walk in, you're peeling off all your layers and you're just trying to get comfortable. But eventually, when they can regulate their heat, it's a lot easier because you don't have to have so many blankets on you, and it's much more mild of an experience. But as for his bed, so in our hospital, basically there are two sets of sliding doors when you're walking into the NICU, or nursery 3. So that's, I believe it's pretty standard throughout Australia. You've got nursery 3 or NICU, which is the highest level of care, special care nursery, nursery 2. And then you've got the HDU, which is the high dependency unit. At King Edward over here, we've got an extra ward, but that's really for babies who are sort of waiting to go home. It's more of a discharging hold kind of unit. 4 beds to a pod. That was what we had. And they had individual pods to sort of bridge the branches of the room together. So if you come through this door, you've got all the pods lined, the other door, all of them lined, and in the middle they put extra rooms and then the nurses station. So the nurses do a great job of telling you where everything is, what you need to know when you're there. Obviously toilets, sinks. You need to
Mhm.
know where to wash the bottles, the fridges to put your milk in, where they keep the wipes, where they keep
Mhm.
the breast pump, because they are communal. So they'll basically keep them there, and whenever you need them, you just take them, wipe
Yeah.
them down, put them back in the station, where the water is, breastfeeding room as well. So if you're not comfortable, there is a room where you can go if you're able to pump in there. You can even pump in the parents' room if your hospital has one. And that's pretty much it in terms of what's in the actual nursery
Mhm.
itself. Based on the health of your baby, you might have a full pod, you might have all four babies in there, you might have fewer babies. For us, we had fewer
Mhm.
babies because Bowie was so high needs that they couldn't have other babies in there, because it meant
Mhm.
that the nurses wouldn't be able to handle all of them if something were to go wrong with two babies at the same
Mhm.
time. So
Mhm.
when you
And
see
since
the pods, sorry, go on.
no, I was going to say because it's very interesting. I just wanted to come back to the, I guess the
Mm,
architecture, so to speak, the way the NICU is
yeah.
arranged. Because as you said, it's is it like it? You talked about branches, so is it like basically you've got a
Mm.
core being your nurses station, and then you've got like branches, which is where you'd have your pods in there. And as you said, it depends on the baby's individual needs, how many pods you can have, but a maximum of four if the babies are lower needs, I guess.
So think about a long wall, and then we've
Mm-hmm.
got, sorry, move my hands in. So we've got the double doors on the left, the double doors on the right.
Yep.
In the
Mm-hmm.
middle, you follow it
Mm-hmm.
straight down into the middle, and then the nurses station is in the middle of the entire NICU. And following that sort of central line, they put a pod, just a single one, and then they've got their
Mm-hmm.
storerooms in there,
Yep.
and then it just, beyond that, it's just the branches. So when you're
Yep.
walking through the double doors, there's a clear path to go straight down to the back where the sink is. So
Mm-hmm.
basically, when a baby is being wheeled in, a bed, a wheelchair for a mother, everything is in a safe path. So everything is
Mm-hmm.
cleared straight. And then when you
Yep.
walk down, you've got a pod with four beds, a pod with four beds, and they're separated with sort of like a mini wall barrier with
Mm-hmm.
glass. So they're
Yep.
sort of semi-enclosed, if you will. And then that
Mm-hmm.
wall obviously allows the power outlets for all of the machines. So it's like the same little room,
Mm.
just sort of plonked further away. And then
Yes.
at the end where the
Yeah.
sinks are, there might be an extra bed just to make room, make use of that space.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then I believe they have one side that is the higher needs. I think there's one side that is just easier to get to. So I don't necessarily, I could be wrong, but I do think I remember someone saying that that side is easier for them to access. So they put the higher risk
Mm-hmm.
babies on that one
Mm-hmm.
side. And another thing is, if you do have twins in there or any multiples, they're not necessarily going to be
Mm-hmm.
together, unfortunately. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not because anyone made a mistake, it's because one baby is probably more well than the other. And it's all a game
Mm-hmm.
of Tetris, trying to make sure there aren't too many very sick babies in the same area so the nurses can get to them if anything goes wrong.
So each nurse is, in a sense, assigned a room. Is that right? With pods in there?
So it goes by the baby. So depending
Mm-hmm.
on the health of the babies, they might be with a nurse who's got a ratio of 1 to 2. So because Bowie was on a
Mm-hmm.
specific ventilator, the jet ventilator, he could only have one nurse, just him, no other babies for
Okay.
that nurse. And that's what created, the empty bed a lot of the time. So when he went on
Mm-hmm.
to CPAP after the jet, he was still quite unwell, but then it was 1 to 2. So then a nurse could come
Mm-hmm.
and look after him and maybe the baby across from him. And then when he moves on
Uh-huh.
to the special care nursery, I think it was 1 to 2 or 3, and it just gets higher and higher wherever you go. So when he was in the children's
Mm-hmm.
hospital, I think it was 1 to 4, because obviously he wasn't in an ICU situation. The parents are there. It's very different.
Yeah, right. That's very interesting, obviously. And I know you're not a nurse, and you obviously can't
Mm.
talk about, what the role of nurses are and so on. But it's very interesting from your perspective, and you know a lot for just being a parent, with quotation marks, obviously. You know a lot, actually, and as you said, that was 18 months ago. You remember a lot of it. That's probably how ingrained in your brain it is forever. This whole experience. But
Oh,
wow,
yeah.
that's really interesting. And so the other thing I want to highlight, I'm guessing, is the lack
Mm.
of privacy, right? Obviously, you share
Mhm.
the room that your baby's in is probably shared, unless, as you said, your baby is quite high needs. And so I'm
Yeah.
guessing that when we're talking about feeding, cuddling, and so on, where it's a skin to skin, there is probably quite a lack of privacy. Am I right?
Yes, yes. So unless you just happen to have no other babies or the parents aren't there yet or they've gone home, then yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you pretty much out in the open. That being said, everyone is focused on their own baby, which
Right.
makes sense. Everyone's in the same spot, and people are very
Yeah.
good at picking up the vibes. They know if you're not in a place to, communicate with them, or if you're obviously showing signs of being shy or nervous. I've got a photo here. It's not perfect, but you can see the space with the other pods behind us.
Mm-hmm.
So you
Mm-hmm.
can
So that's a
see that
photo of
there's another
you and
square
your
over there.
husband and Bowie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so each pod, you've
Wow.
got enough room for a desk. You'll have the isolate, and you'll also have room for a chair. Now they do their best to supply lounge chairs as much as they can. So there we go.
Mm-hmm.
The lounge chair, and again, you can see the desk, and you've got all your drawers with the equipment, but you can
Mm-hmm.
also put some personal items in there. So you want to bring in sheets or milestone cards or
Mm-hmm.
books to read to the baby, you can leave them in there. They
Yeah.
usually have an empty one,
Mm-hmm.
one or two drawers. But yeah, so there's
Yeah.
enough space for that, and they mark the floor. I suspect they would do it in other hospitals. They mark the floor with different colors so you know that's your space. And
Uh-huh.
particularly
Yeah.
when there's a surge of COVID, they'll ask you not to move beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
So it just makes it easier
Yeah.
for you. And so, yeah, so you've got the recliners, otherwise an armchair as well. I'm so sorry, I actually forgot what your question was.
No, no, that definitely answers the question, actually. And I was talking about the lack of privacy, and the
Yes, that's
need
right.
to, I guess, highlight that you might be sharing your space,
Yeah,
even though we know that obviously when you've had your baby, you want to be in your bubble and so on. Obviously, this is
yeah.
so different, right? And yeah, I just wanted to highlight that, in as much as obviously the nurses in the hospital are trying to make it a bit more, your space, so you can bring in, the books, whatever it is that helps you to make you feel more, I can't say at home, like it's your space. Yeah, it's shared and so on. So yeah, no, that definitely answers it. And it's I know that each parent is obviously focused on their own children. They're not trying to peak.
I just want to add as well, in terms of the privacy in the pod, if you do find that you can talk to the other parents, I
Hmm.
definitely recommend it, because I'm on so many different Facebook groups and Instagram accounts for premature parents in
Yeah.
Australia and worldwide. And a lot of them say, "Oh, I didn't chat to anyone. I didn't feel up to it," which is completely normal. But if you
Mm,
can manage the energy to say hi to someone, even if it's out in the cafe getting a coffee and not in the middle of it, do, because they'll understand more than
mm,
anyone ever will. They'll see you in these moments. No, you can't go back and relive those moments and remake those friendships. So
yeah.
if you have the wherewithal to say hi, that was a habit I got into. I tried to say hello to everyone and just reach out,
Mm.
because you never know when you're going to need, that extra support. So it's definitely worthwhile, and it makes the experience a bit easier.
No, that's right. And you've touched on something really important that I wanted to talk about, which is the parent side of things, right? So obviously when you're in there,
Mm.
it's emotionally, it's physically draining, it's, mental health wise, you've potentially just given birth, or it happened, a few days, weeks ago, and now your baby or your
Mhm.
babies are unwell. It's obviously, it's not a great time. But obviously talking about what you can do for yourself to try and,
Mhm.
I guess, not sink mentally, if that makes sense, and try
Mhm.
and connect. As you
Yeah.
said, those are the parents in there. They are the best people to understand what you're going through,
Mhm.
because the reason why they're in there is because they've also got a child that requires help or is unwell, and so therefore they exactly understand what you're going through, and it's probably easier to communicate with them than to try and explain to your circle of friends or your family everything about the NICU and what it's like and what it feels like, and if you've never seen it, if you've never experienced it, you just can't have that deep understanding. And so therefore trying to socialize, trying to have adult conversations, and have a little bit of a,
Mhm.
I guess, social life, and that can be the start of amazing friendships as well, that can go, obviously beyond the NICU, because again, those people have a baby maybe about the same age, gestation, potentially, and they're going through similar things,
Yeah.
maybe not the exact same, they're not, maybe it's not the same milestones or whatsoever, but they understand what you're going through, they're going through the exact same things, and that can be a great help in terms of mental health, and trying to stay as happy as you can. That's not a good term, in terms of trying to stay afloat during
Yeah.
this really difficult and draining time.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, definitely. And it's not even the hard times that you're sharing with these other parents, it's the
Yeah,
milestones, because
yeah.
people with healthy, well term
Mhm.
babies don't understand how
Mm.
exciting it is when your baby's putting on weight, or
Yeah.
when your baby can finally eat beyond a tube. So it's so helpful. I myself am part of a mum's group. We all met in the hospital. Some of us
Mhm.
maybe, met one person and then brought them in and
Yeah.
that kind of thing. But there's about a dozen of us. We've got a group chat. We've got a weekly play group. We all went to each other's kids' first birthdays. We go out for dinners. We go out for charity walks, for prems. We see each other regularly, and that's been 18 months, and it's amazing. We rally around each other for
Yeah.
good times. We had Secret Santa. I had dinner with a few ladies for my birthday. When they're ill, we rally, we send flowers, we cook for each other. When they have another prem baby, we're there offering support.
Yeah.
And there's absolutely nothing like it. So
Mm.
I really urge people, if you can say hi to someone, if you
Yeah.
can make friends, if there's enough of you, make a Facebook group, go out for
Mm.
coffee if your babies are on the same timetable. It's so worth it. And if not just for you, for your spouse,
Yeah.
because as mothers in a women's and maternity hospital, you're getting the support, you're a patient
Yeah.
on file, but
Mhm.
if your spouse is a male, they can't access, well, I mean, even if they're female, they still can't access it. They're not the patient,
Mm.
but they can't access the same resources. So if you can make a friendship with a few people, if their spouses are happy to come along, they can then meet.
Mhm.
They then have someone to talk to joke about the baby spew with, to joke about how small the babies are when they're doing well, and
Mm.
make fun conversation. It's really, that has been one key thing that a lot of the women in my group find, is the dads don't have anyone to talk to, and they see us
Yeah.
all getting
Mhm.
together and going out, doing this and that, and they want that.
Yeah.
So for us personally, our group, we do a monthly coffee and walk catch up. So the idea being
Mm.
that everyone takes a turn to sort of host in their neighborhood, because we're from all over, and then we all get together with the kids, go for a walk somewhere with a cafe, and then
Yeah.
we usually have a bunch of dads come along. So it's really nice for them to be able
Oh,
to
no.
meet each other and see all the other babies
Mm.
because they really care. And that's the other thing. Like when you see
Mm.
someone going through this, you care about their babies. You see them on a
Yeah.
bad day. We had a lot of friends who saw Bowie on his many rough days, and
Hmm.
they understand
Yeah.
how amazing it is when he does succeed at something. So, yeah, really, really important to set yourself up with a village if you can.
Mm.
And if there
Exactly.
are easily accessible psych services at the hospital, try it.
Hmm.
You can't lose. If it's not your thing, it's just
Yeah.
a conversation with someone
Yeah.
who has spoken to lots of people in the same boat as you. And I know not everyone's into therapy, but at the end of the day, if you're wanting someone to talk to and no one understands, these people
Yeah.
understand. So it's definitely worthwhile. And there are services out there for men, I should mention. There are services. The social
Hmm.
workers are the ones who will put you onto them, and it's definitely worth looking into.
Yeah, no, that's right. That is a really good point. That so in terms of the admission, as you said, you're a
Mm,
patient, so is Bowie, also was Bowie, and so
hmm.
therefore your husband wasn't a patient, so he wasn't able to get the same services you were. And yes, it is super important that, dads and partners get access to services, whether it is through, as you said, the social worker, or it's through, I'm guessing charities would also have some help for dads, for partners to navigate this really, emotionally difficult time, and to get the services they need to, whether that's, talking to a counselor, a psychologist, or it's connecting them with potentially other dads and partners. Maybe it is important to,
Yeah.
as you said, find your village. We talk about it all the time in terms
Mm,
of, postpartum, you need help, you need support, you need, it's good if you've got
yeah.
people that can cook for you, people that can help you, clean the house, entertain the other kids. But when you're going through such a difficult time, it's especially more important to have a village, whatever that looks like. Obviously, it can be your current friends, your family, but the people in the NICU, the moms, the dads, they understand what you're going through, and they are, as you said, the ones that will really cheer up when, when those milestones have been reached. But also they will be there, and they will understand
Yeah.
what it means when there is a little bit of a setback, I guess, and they will be able to, I guess, have the words, because they understand exactly what it is, when your friends and families may not fully understand the depth of it all, I guess. So, yes,
That's it.
super important.
That's really important as well, is just families, because you've got, NICU parents who see it, it doesn't get
Yeah,
lost on them. Whereas when you bring a baby
yeah,
home and they're well, people tend to forget that that trauma is now living inside of you. So just because the
yeah,
baby looks well doesn't mean that you don't have a bunch of things and therapies and
yeah,
appointments and things to focus on, and a bunch of triggers
exactly.
that come with that. And I should also mention as well, just in regards to partners seeking mental health assistance, GPs can be really great just for the mental health care plan.
Mm,
They tend to
yeah.
be very easy to assist when you explain
Hmm.
that sort of trauma. I know my husband went to a few different ones just based on availability,
Yeah,
and they made it so easy for him to just continue
good.
and get the sessions, which is also
Yeah.
great, because I think a lot of people think, oh, it's going to take forever and they're going to ask uncomfortable
Mm,
questions. But the reality is you've gone
yeah.
through a trauma, so they're going to help you get what you need,
Yeah.
which is great. And
Mm,
another thing I just want to quickly press on is, with being the inpatient, something interesting I found when we went to the children's hospital, because obviously Bowie's the
mhm,
patient and I'm not at all. I
mhm,
actually transferred my psych services over because I prefer in person communication. And that was
mhm.
interesting because the psychologist was technically there for Bowie. The questions had to
Okay.
be
Mhm,
around him and how he's doing. But
mhm,
again, they're very understanding of what parents go through. So even though
mhm.
technically they're for the child, they make the time for
Yeah.
you, and they're amazing. And
Mhm,
because they've got fewer adults to contend with than I would imagine, the other hospital did, I got to see her quite regularly, if I needed it twice a week, but always once a week. So that's always another option. If you change hospitals, seek it. Again, social worker, just ask to see if they've got that resource and keep that going while you're still bedside.
No, that's a really good point. And so that leads smoothly into my next question, which was what types of services, are or did you have access to, or do you know are available? I know you mentioned so social worker, which is, we know that social workers are great because they can actually liaise and put you in touch with the relevant services, the relevant referrals, pathways, and help you there. They can also, I believe, assist with anything in terms of paperwork, anything probably to do with maybe Centrelink or getting probably in terms of, for
That's right.
example, parking, because you might need to get a specific parking permit to pay less, I'm guessing, because you'd be going to the hospital every day, really. So things like that, they can really help liaise and find the relevant services. So social workers are amazing for that. Counselors, psychologists on the ward are also amazing, obviously, in terms of talking about being able to debrief. Potentially you've just given birth, so debriefing your birth, really important. Talking about, as you said, this trauma, this experience, talking about your feelings, and just finding strategies to navigate through this time that probably no one anticipates, really, unless no one really anticipates that they're going to be going through a NICU journey with their child or their children. So you're probably never equipped for it unless you know really ahead of time that it's highly likely, because maybe the baby is quite sick and it's known in advance. But even then, how do you prepare for all the emotional and the physical draining aspect of it, and the overwhelm of it all, right? What other services or even charities did you have access to, or do you know might be available for parents who have a child in the NICU?
So I mentioned the goodie bags earlier. I believe that most
Yep.
hospitals get them because the charities that I follow online often show different locations across Australia.
Mm-hmm.
So it's worth familiarizing yourself with the items that they give you, remember their names, follow them on
Mm-hmm.
Instagram. And in the parents' room, I would imagine ours had a board or a bench, and it had all of the different cards and brochures and
Mm-hmm.
posters for all of the same charities. So they do tend to sort of
Oh,
be
yeah.
in your face, which is great because when you have those
Yeah.
moments of, oh, who do I go to? You remember. So that's
Mm-hmm.
really helpful. And you're right, the social workers, they will help you with everything that you listed, Medicare. They'll generally write you a letter to speed that up. Parking,
Mm-hmm.
generally, they'll talk you through how to do that. Every hospital will have their own sort of thing.
Yeah.
They will be there for the hard times as well. So if you're being approached by the doctor for a meeting, they sat in, so they were across it. And the same at
Mm-hmm.
PCH, the social worker was always privy to our meetings to make sure
Mm-hmm.
that if there's anything that needed to be done behind the scenes, they could be across.
Mm-hmm.
We heard someone talking about a charity who provided frozen meals. So then the social worker contacted the lady who organised that, gave us the number, and liaised
Mm-hmm.
accordingly. And they're even great to follow up beyond, because I know that one
Mm-hmm.
of our friends had a second preemie earlier in the year, and
Mm-hmm.
I just sent an email to the social worker, and she said, "Yep, I'll let her know that you're going to text her about the meals, and that should be fine." So they
Mm-hmm.
keep doing it even when you're gone. They're there. I know a lot of the mums in my mum's group reach out to them when they've got bundles of clothes or baby items to donate, and they'll make sure that they
Yeah.
pick them up or arrange the drop off. So they're very involved, which is
Beautiful.
wonderful. In terms of the
Mm.
charity, so I
Mm-hmm.
remember last time I accidentally named the wrong charity who organises the food. So it's Helping Little Hands. So shout out
Okay.
to Joe, who organises that in Perth. I felt so bad because I knew I was saying the wrong one, but I couldn't quite think of it. So in WA, the big ones are Miracle Babies, Life's Little Treasures, Tiny Sparks, and Helping Little Hands. So those are the four main ones that I know. So Tiny Sparks is amazing. We actually attend a developmental play group with Ability WA. So they run that for prems. They've got two different play groups, and it's a very cost-effective play group as well. There's allied health professionals who come to every session. So they take turns. One week you might have speech and OT, you might have dietetics and physio. They take turns. So really amazing. And they have a lot to do with the milestone cards and things in the little goodie bags. Same with Life's Little Treasures. They're a big one. So they are very lovely. They've got online sessions. So another resource for grandparents and dads, as well as mums and parents in the hospital and parents who have taken the babies home. They've got different sessions where you can just hop online. They'll basically go through, what to do, introduce yourself, tell us about your baby, and you can just chat in a live group chat with everyone, and they'll respond to every comment that you make, share photos, that sort of thing. So I did that in hospital, out of hospital, and obviously I haven't done the dads or grandparents one, but it's there. They really keep track of the families as well. So when we had our 100-day milestone, they sent us a quilt. When we came home, they sent us a gift box with products and a baby monitor. They have a competition every month with the online chats, and they'll send you a onesie to put the baby in, and all these wonderful things that just make you feel sort of remembered is really nice. And they have a big charity walk that we did as a group last year, which was amazing. So we're looking forward to that again. A lot of the charities, obviously, the money is going towards research and equipment for the babies, for the neonates themselves. But the people who work in them are so lovely. So reaching out to them is always a good idea. They post a lot. So when you're a NICU parent, you want to get it out. You want to share everything. Well, if you're like me, you do. So when they post things and ask questions, how old was your baby? Or did you have, a baby in this age group or that age group? Or what's your milestone this week? It's really nice to find community in that and have other people cheer you on, because you get a lot of sympathy from people. And, sometimes you're like, yeah, that was hard, and I recognize that, and good job me. But other times you just want to say the facts as they are and focus on the next and focus on the good things that are happening. So those charities and others, there are definitely others out there, but they make a really good effort of creating community.
Yeah. And so the four you've mentioned, I'll put a link to their, I'm guessing they've got a website. I'll put a link to their website so that it can be found, because I know some people listen to this while driving. So they obviously go, oh, I can't write everything down. So it'll be in the show notes. I'll put a link to all those charities that you've mentioned. They do an amazing job, and they are there to support parents. And I just, if actually, are you involved with any of them? Like, do you know people who work there? Because I'd love to connect with someone and get someone from that charity, like Tiny Sparks or another one, to come on the podcast and talk about what they do. Actually,
I mean, because we've been going to the playgroup for, I think, 3 or 4 terms now. So I could probably ask the team leader if we can maybe reach out. I'll start there for sure, because we see them so often.
Thank you. Yeah, because I'd love to. Those charities are doing an amazing job. The people that work there or volunteer their time, they are selfless. They just want to help parents. They want to support them the best they can, and they deserve to be known and to be recognized for the amazing work they do. So if you can put me in touch with 100%. Anyone out there, I'll get them on the podcast and highlight the amazing work they do.
I'm going to say, if you do, email them, because some of them are on the smaller side, so it's a little bit easier to get someone to respond. So it's worth just emailing them.
Right.
Because I'm sure they want people to know and learn and speak about them.
Definitely. Yeah. I know I can do that. I always try, and if I know that someone might know someone,
Yeah.
then I'll try and get to that person
Yeah.
directly, because
It's
otherwise,
a bit
you're
easier.
emailing like info at.
It's a bit of a cold
So yeah,
call.
if I can try and
Yeah.
get directly to someone, but yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah.
I'll reach out to a few and see if anyone wants to talk to me. And see what can be done. But yeah, no, that's a really good point. The next thing I wanted to talk about, because we've mentioned milestones, right? We've mentioned it a lot, and I know milestones are so different based on obviously the gestation that the baby's born at, or what's going on with the baby and where they're at and so on. But can you tell us again, because I know you did it in your episode, can you tell us again what
Yeah.
milestones, for example, you looked forward to, or you aim to get to with Bowie, just so we can get a better understanding of what we're talking about there.
Yeah, so with Bowie, he's a bit different. So he is in the minority, having been on the ventilator for so long. So he was 10 weeks on the ventilator.
Mm-hmm.
So for him, hearing him for the first time was a big one because he didn't make a sound when he was born. He was whisked away and intubated. So for us, we hadn't heard him. We hadn't heard him cry, even make a little whingy, cute baby sound, nothing like that. The eyes opening as well. I've written a few down here. Having your first cuddle, getting them out of bed. For us, it was very difficult because anything they do takes a lot of energy. So because Bowie was so sick for the first 10 weeks, if he had a bad day, that meant no cuddle. I don't think I had my first cuddle until into the second week. My husband once had to wait 11 days before he could hold the baby, because you also don't pass on the baby. So if I'm cuddling, I'm cuddling. He's not going to my husband. With the vent, he's all strapped in. So because there are so many tubes and wires, everything has to get taped to the chair. So it takes multiple staff members and about 10-15 minutes for them to do it. And then it has to be at least an hour, because gone to all that effort, you can't just put him back and take him out, put him back. That's it. So cuddles are a really big one. And then for us, when he was no longer on the vent, that was a huge one, because we could then lift him out ourselves and have more cuddles. And that's a big one for all parents, is breathing. So most babies will start on the CPAP, which is this beautiful Christmas pudding hat here. They don't like it. It hurts their nostrils. So basically this guy goes into their nose. So you can see it's quite hard plastic.
Yeah, so that's the tube.
Yeah, and they have to really shove it in. There can't be any gaps. So that's why they have the little foam to sort of act as a barrier. So CPAP, I wrote it down, continuous positive airway pressure. So it gives the respiratory support with either upper airway obstruction or respiratory failure. So that's what the babies are suffering from if they receive that. And then, so you've got the cannula, the tubing. There are so many parts with the CPAP, and they get all hot under there, so it's very uncomfortable. So a lot of parents are very happy when they get to leave CPAP. We were different because we were on the vent, so we were really hoping for CPAP. And just for contrast, this is the vent, so tube down the throat. So big one. That's the big one. What else? They get massages when they're that tiny. They get regular coconut oil massages. That's a really nice thing to do with them if you're there. So a lot of parents will plan their trips based around what they call the cares. So nappy, wiping their face, changing them, like they might, if they've got little outfits on, that sort of thing. So the cares are done twice a day usually, and then once overnight. So if there are any COVID visiting restrictions, generally they'll try and time it around where the parents can be there. First bath, obviously, is a big one, because that can take a while depending on what breathing apparatus they're on. They can't have the bath. So that can be very nice. Normal ones like holidays. Clothes for the first time is really exciting, because one, they need to be big enough to put, real clothes on. And then 2, that means that
Yes.
they don't necessarily have all of the different probes and wires on. So they make little NICU clothes. So when you get in, there are baskets full of these little
That is
tops.
cute.
So cute. And they've also got, where are the beanies? So a bunch of different beanies. So you go to the baskets and you can pick their little outfits out, which is really cute. And a friend's mum made this one, which is lovely.
No,
And
so
mittens as
cute.
well. We actually discovered that dog socks make the best mittens because they're not knit. So they can't get their little fingers through. And you can see here he's got his little dog sock on. So it's the same one.
That is a great tip. I love it. Dog
They're
socks.
really good. All the nurses went out and they bought a bunch because you get 4 in a pack and they're a lot cheaper than mittens. My mother-in-law actually found them. She's such a thrifty, find a workaround kind of lady, very crafty. And she just got a bunch and we thought that's ridiculous, but they're perfect. So yeah, they're really good. So if you ever want to make donations and you've got packs that have never been used, then there you go. There are a few more milestones. Medications. So when you've got no medications, or for us, I think we had 3 or 4 med charts. And then once we had none, it was like amazing. And then nappy sizes as well, weight gain, breathing. Any statistic is big for NICU parents because every day you're allowed to be part of the rounds and you're allowed to look at the chart and they'll explain to you, the nurses will explain to you what everything means. So you're very switched on and you know what they're talking about and you know what numbers look good and what numbers look bad. So those are big things. When they're writing the stats, they'll have arrows pointing up, pointing down. They might highlight it red, highlight it green, so you can easily monitor how it's all going. So those ones are really big as well. Also, due date, of course. If they reach 100 days, we reach 200 days, so we do that. The nurses always joke, if you reach 100 days, you bring a cake in. So we did that, and a few friends did that as well. And their bed type as well. So with the different breathing machines and the ability to regulate their heat, their temperature, comes different beds. So eventually you go from an isolate to an open air bed. So you can see the rail there. Much easier. Pop the rail down, grab the baby. And it's a lot easier to change the nappy that way as well because normally you're doing it through the holes. So that's a lot easier. So those are the main ones. And yeah, depending on how your child is breathing, there are a lot more. So when we could start holding him every day, that was amazing because you see other parents and it's absolutely heartbreaking when, and breastfeeding as well. Breastfeeding is a huge one. If you can, that's a huge one. And twin cuddles. So if you do have multiples, that's another unique milestone, is having the 2 of them or however many there are all together. So that's always lovely to see because you can always tell because the nurses get very excited and they take the photos for the parents. And that one's really, really nice. And if you do make friends with your pod mates, they will celebrate with you. And if you're lucky, they'll even text you if something good happens. So it's nice. Lots to celebrate.
Wow. Can you you showed it before we were recording, can you show again the nappy size that Bowie was in before and in comparison to what he's in
I've got
now?
one that's actually, I think, folded. Yeah. I think this one's been used on the doll, so it's a bit more limp. So this one here, that's my hand.
Wow, so this nappy is about the size of the palm of your hand, really.
And it was too big.
Tiny.
So when it was wrapped on him, see if I can find the photo actually. So it's sort of just, here we go. So you can see that the strap of it is down because it needs to be nice and loose for all the wires. But still very too big. And then, just for comparison, we've got a size 4 nappy and his first little nappy.
Wow. And so what size did you say that
So
first nappy was? Did you
4S,
say
they
it was
call it.
4S?
But there's no, I don't believe there's any in between. So when they switch
Wow.
out, you just have to get the newborn nappy and fold it over until they're big enough. Yeah, which is interesting. But
Okay.
basically, a doll nappy, like if you go to Kmart or whatever and you buy those are pretty much
Yep.
it. So again, you saw him earlier, our little doll. You can see how it would be too big on him.
Yes. That is totally insane. And to
Oh,
even think about clothes on a tiny baby. You said Bowie was
that was his
21
head,
centimeters,
28
I think, if I'm
centimeters.
remembering
Yeah.
right.
No.
Eh, Oh, sorry, 28.
And that
Yes.
stretched out
Yeah,
because they always
putting
have
a,
their
a,
little
a
legs up. So they're even smaller.
yes, yeah, of course.
And just more tiny
Wow,
things. So
putting clothes is,
this is his
yeah, do
first
a huge.
um his blood pressure cuff. So that's the size 1.
Oh, that
And
is a
then
wow. That, like, honestly, if I have to describe it, that looks like just a piece of tape with a tubing at the end.
pretty
It
much.
doesn't look like an actual cuff
So for
that obviously we
comparison,
know of as adults.
at
That
this time when
is
he could fit in this, he could
tiny.
also fit my ring on his arm. So just to give you the comparison, they're about the same size, and
Oh,
that's a ring.
wow.
So that's another thing. If your baby is that teeny and you have
Wow.
a ring that you want to put on them, it's a really special photo to take just to show how tiny they are. And then we've got the size
Hmm.
2 and the size 3. So
Exactly.
they give you a lot of things to take home. So it's always good to have a little Ziploc bag, just
Yeah.
in case, because they will offer you just lots of things.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah, and it's good, as you said, it's a keepsake.
yeah,
You've got to, I guess, also show Bowie
that's it.
where he's come from and how far he's come, when it's more appropriate. And for you,
Mm,
obviously, to remember what you've gone through and everything that's happened, and to look back and go, wow, we started there and
yeah,
now we're here.
yeah.
That's amazing.
That's it. And like there are so many things to celebrate, but a big takeaway is that the trauma doesn't go away. So
Yeah.
just to press on about the mental health side
Yeah.
of everything, it's really important that you understand as a supporter of people who've gone through this that it doesn't just go away,
Mm.
that there are moments that take you by
Yeah.
surprise. You might see someone breastfeeding,
Hmm.
or you might see a pregnant belly, or you might go to the baby shower for the first time and you
Hmm.
hadn't thought
Yeah.
about it until you got there, and then you start crying, or someone else has a preemie and
Yeah.
you relive all of that, or you hear an alarm. That's another thing in the NICU. There are so many different sounds, and it is likely that you will get PTSD from the
Hmm.
alarms, especially if your baby is someone who has need for a lot of them. I know that my body used to shake and I would
Hmm.
freeze and tears would come out of my eyes, and it's very hard to get over those sounds, especially if they are quite specific, because
Hmm.
you're not you're not learning to get over them. It's not the same ringtone for everything. So
Yeah.
very important to be kind to
Mm.
yourself as someone who's gone through that. And there are times where you're just going to be
Yeah.
sad. And again, that's when those friends come in handy, because they won't be mad at you if you don't text back. They won't be mad at you if you cancel on them again. They won't be mad at you if you have to
Mm.
leave an event because you're anxious. Something I've found with these women is
Yeah.
no one judges anyone. You become a lot more compassionate, and the silliness
Hmm.
of
Hmm.
arguments and those sorts of things and being offended by people's busy lives, it just all washes away. So it's really important to see that for
Yeah.
yourself. You would forgive someone else in that position. So forgive yourself for being
Hmm.
upset or
Hmm.
being scared, or because there are so many
Mm.
other things that will trigger
Exactly.
you, trying for your next baby, having siblings who are having,
Mm.
fertility or birth issues.
Hmm.
It all pops up. And yeah, I think overall it's really
Mm.
important that family members remember that they're dealing with a changed person, and
Mm.
their babies are miracles. They
Mm.
really are. My baby is a miracle. He was just viable,
Yeah.
and if
Mm.
this happened,
Mm.
20 years ago, he wouldn't be here. So I think it's nice when people overcome this trauma and they're happy and they're at home and their kids are thriving,
Yeah.
but it's always there. It's always there. So it's nice
Yeah.
to just remember that. Be kind.
No, that's right. And you've made a really, really good point about giving yourself permission to feel what you feel and to not be okay in certain situations, as you said, whether it's your friends having a baby shower and you just can't show up for it because of everything that's happened, or because
Mm,
today's just not a good day. It's okay to give yourself permission to not be okay and to feel the feelings that you have, because I can't even understand what you've gone through because I haven't gone through it. I cannot understand the depth of it, the emotional involvement, the PTSD,
mm.
the trauma. I can't understand the half of it. And so I thank you so much for sharing this story, because I couldn't say it myself, obviously, and it's really, there's a lot of things you've said that I wouldn't have thought about as a mom who's had a full term baby, and there's a lot of things that you've put into perspective where I can now have a deeper understanding, and as you said, feel compassion for women like you who have had a baby prematurely and what they're going through. And even then, I don't have a full depth understanding, but I feel like this conversation has really helped me to put a lot of things in perspective, and obviously be super grateful for what I have, but also be incredibly compassionate of people who are going through, I guess, their motherhood journey starts in a way different pathway, and what that can look like for someone else. And the space and the mental health aspect of it all is really important to talk about, and you've done that beautifully, so thank you so much for that.
Oh, I hope I have. Thank you. That's very kind. Yeah, I'm very passionate about this, and it's nice to be able to sort of advocate for my community, because that's what I consider it to be,
Yeah.
is my community, and I'm really proud to be part
Yeah.
of something that's so special,
Yeah.
full of survivors and full of amazing parents. So it's nice to help other people understand, because I really do think that that can make a huge difference. The more people who
Yes.
are the loved ones of the parents going through it, the more they can be helpful and,
Yeah.
look things up by themselves and don't ask too many questions if they've already been told, and just be there for the parents. It's hard because obviously I don't know what it's like to be a grandparent, and they want to look after their adult children and their adult children's babies. But final piece of advice is just don't make more work for the parents. It's a really big one, and I think it can be applied to
Yeah.
everything once they get home as well. And yeah, I just thank you so much for having me again. I hope I didn't repeat myself on too many things from last time.
No, it's been really good, and I know that you had said a lot of those things in your episode, but I wanted to make it so it's easier for parents to find, everything about the NICU. So it's all in this one episode, and if people want to listen to your actual pregnancy, your birth, and then your NICU journey, and the when you came home journey as well, it's all in your episode, and I'll put the link up there so that people can listen to the actual full story of your little miracle Bowie, who is amazing and smashing it today. And it's just so good to hear it. Actually, since you talked
Mm,
about your community, if you know
mm,
anyone who wants to share their story,
yeah,
please, get us in
yeah,
touch.
no
I'd
worries.
love
I'll
to.
put it in.
Always looking for people to tell their stories. And I think, as you said, it's important. Yeah, amazing. Because I think it's important, to, again, as you said, to help whoever the listeners are, whether they're the ones going through a NICU stay or they're the ones who might be supporting someone they know who has a child in the
Yeah,
NICU, to gain a better understanding, to understand how to help or how to be helped, I
yeah,
guess. And so, yeah, those conversations are essential in starting this conversation,
yeah,
or gaining understanding knowledge about what it's like and how to
yeah.
help, how
And
to be of
to that point
assistance.
as well, unfortunately, some people can expect to lose some friendships with people along the way. And a friend of mine put it perfectly: not everyone can handle trauma or drama that's beyond their own. So it might come out in an argument over something silly and they don't want to see you anymore because perhaps it's too much for them to take on their shoulders. So they sort of
Yeah.
lash out, and that's okay. The door closes. You
Mm.
don't see each other for that time. You might be friends later, but not everyone is equipped to be support, and it's not worth wasting the time trying to figure out what happened. So yeah, those are the tools that people can use.
No, that's right. And it's the same thing in motherhood, right? You lose some friends sometimes when, I don't know, you're the first one in your group to have a child, and your friends don't really understand what it's like to have a child and to, have total sleepless nights, and the next day you just don't really want to catch up. So, I mean, it's the same in motherhood. You lose some friends that maybe they were just not meant to be in your circle. Maybe they were just not ready for it. Who knows? But that's how it is. Well, thank you so much, Shantelle, for your time again, for telling us about everything around the NICU, because I know it's helped me a lot to understand to have a sort of a better understanding. Obviously, I don't have a full in-depth knowledge and so on, but it's been really helpful for me, at least. So I hope the listeners also find it really helpful. And thank you so much. And I'm just so happy to hear about Bowie every time, and to hear how he's going, and how well he's going. It's amazing. I loved your story. Obviously, it was just mind-blowing, and him being born so early, and he survived, and no surgery, nothing. He's just a miracle, really. There's no other words. He's
walking.
Incredible.
I didn't even mention that part. He's walking, so yeah, I invested in some good running shoes, so we'll see.
Wow. Bowie walking, hey? Oh, that's a whole new level of parenting now.
Help me.
Oh, that's amazing. I'm so happy that he's walking, but it's making it a lot harder for you. Oh, that's amazing. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want to get notified of when a new episode comes out, please subscribe to this show on your podcast listening platform. Also, I would really appreciate it if you could leave me a review on Apple Podcast, or share this episode so that other moms can find it. If you would like to tell your own pregnancy, birth, or parenting story, please head to the show notes and you will find a form there to get in touch with me. Again, thank you so much for listening, and I will be with you again next week for a new episode.